Hi, everyone. My name is Ssanyu Lukoma, and I'm the founder and executive director of Brown Kids Read Incorporated, and you're watching So Booking Cool.
So fucking, so fucking, so fucking cool.
There's so motherfucking cool. So listen to So Booking Cool.
Welcome to So Booking Cool, it's Jewel B. Today's guest is an entrepreneur, storyteller, public speaker, and performer. In 2018, when she was 13, she founded Brown Kids Read, a platform created to help encourage youth of color to read diverse literature. The company recently launched the Book Junkie podcast, in which our guest introduces her friends to books she's read and engages them in conversation. She also has interviewed authors including Nick Stone, Kaysen Callender, and Lisa Allen-Agostini. Additionally, our guest is the owner of Pathways Entertainment, which provides fun, party, and event activities for children. It is also a Brown Kids Read sponsor. Here with us today in this episode, she is Ssanyu Lukoma. Stay tuned for our conversation only on So Booking Cool. Hello, Ssanyu. Did I say your last name right?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, that was correct.
I'm glad that I did, and I love your first name, by the way. It's beautiful.
Thank you.
No problem. So, what is it like being a businesswoman at 15 years old?
Okay, well, that is a very loaded question because I do a lot of other activities. So I also play basketball competitively, and I'm a competitive as you can see, I do a lot of things competitively, but I'm a competitive public speaker. I'm also a junior broadcaster for Kids Hub Media Network, and I sing, dance, and act as well. So doing Brown Kids Read, all of those extracurricular activities and having schoolwork at the same time is pretty tough and really challenging, especially because I want to have a social life and I'm homeschooled, so I have to make time for my friends. But I know that my number one responsibilities are school and Brown Kids Read, so I kind of just push myself to do my best and everything that comes with that. So all of my activities, all of Brown Kids Read and all of school, I just get it done because I know that's my responsibility. So that's how I handle doing Brown Kids Read and everything at the same time because it's a lot of work and it's really challenging, but I love it. So that's why I keep going.
So, what inspired you to become somebody at such a young age to be involved in various projects?
So ever since I was younger, I always had an entrepreneurial spirit. And that year when I was 13, I actually was working with another nonprofit called Double Dose to bring a Barnes& and Noble fundraiser to a store that was close to us. So they're twins and they wrote a book called Twin Tales. So they wanted to do a promotional event for that. And they came to me because I wanted to also help plan the event. So I started Brown Kids Read. It wasn't originally supposed to be a nonprofit. It was actually just the name of the event. But I went to that event and I had set up all of the author book signings and I had created story times. I even performed a book and we did crafts, and all of those things got the kids really, really excited. So although I had side businesses like Pathways Entertainment and a jewelry business as well, I wanted to find a way to inspire people at the same time as doing what I love. And when I saw the looks on those kids' faces when they saw the books, it just really sunk in for me that this is a way that I can, reach people and bless people and just get them excited about reading as a whole.
And how did your love for reading begin, Ssanyu?
I think that was from birth because I started reading really young. I started reading young adult literature way earlier than most of the other kids in my age group. So the first time I read Hunger Games, I was in fourth grade. And that's when I really started getting into young adult literature, which blossomed my love for literature as a whole. So I'd say that I've always been an avid reader, but I really started falling in love with books when I was in fourth grade. But I also learned that I read books really fast. So I'm kind of a speed reader, which means that I can get through more books. And it's a lot better, especially because I'm doing Brown Kids Read. because I can read a book and then interview an author, or I can read a book and recommend it to somebody else. So just being able to read books quickly and then having access to so many books due to Brown Kids Read is a great thing for me. And I think that's because I was born with a love for reading.
And you were reading about the likes of Ruby Bridges at a young age, right?
Oh yeah,
And
for
other
sure.
historical figures.
Yes, because my mom, she would supply me with all of the books with young Black girls and inspirational Black women and people of all cultures, which she found very important, and which is why I believe in diverse literature so much. And it's because she gave me those books when I was younger, so I grew up appreciating other people's cultures and having value in diverse literature.
And I know your bio mentions that you realized your friends and your peers were not supplied with diverse books. So can you just tell us more about when you noticed that?
Yes, so that same summer when I did the Brown Kids Read event at Barnes & Noble, I had volunteers, and I made sure that my volunteers were teenagers because I recognized that the younger kids always look up to teenagers, you know, and
Mhm.
I wanted the younger kids to see them as good role models who love reading and who are excited by it. But when I went to that event, the teenagers were in awe as well. And I was like, what happened? Because I never really had that experience of not having diverse literature. But I asked around a little bit and they were like, yeah, all of the books that we read in school had the same kind of person on the cover. And that really upset me, and it made me feel like I had to do something to change that.
So as soon as you had that realization that you wanted to make this change and make this difference, this positive impact, what steps did you take afterwards to making it happen?
So both of my parents are entrepreneurs as well, and I had a lot of guidance from them. So when I first realized that I wanted to do Brown Kids Read, it's not just that one event, but as a long-term endeavor, I asked them, how should we go about this? And thankfully, they gave me a loan to buy like $2,000 worth of books to start the Brown Reads bookshelf. So at first, I did so much research on starting a nonprofit, and I really educated myself on the importance of diverse literature and starting children young with reading diverse literature. So once I did all of that, I went to my parents for help, and they helped me out a lot. We filed to be a 501c3. Last year, we became tax exempt. So all of those things, I would say, came from the research. So that was the first step for sure. And then the second step was asking my parents.
Wow. All right. Wow, Sanyu. What is your process for featuring the books on the Brown Kids Read website?
So a lot of the time, authors will either reach out to Brown Kids Read through Instagram direct message, or they'll shoot us an email, and that happens pretty much every day. Or I'll go out and I'll do cold emailing, which I love, to authors that I've read books from and that I'm really inspired by. And a lot of the time, surprisingly, they'll respond to me. But I guess it's also because they've heard of Brown Kids Read maybe, or because, I'm 15. But it's just exciting when those authors reach out to me because I love that. But yes, so I either reach out to those authors and then, or they reach out to me, and from there I give them a featured author package. So in that package, they get a social media blast, they get their book featured on the front page of the website, they get an author profile, and they get a whole bunch of things just to promote their book. And they pay for that by donating the stock that we have. So a lot of our bookshelf is actually donated books, and that's how we make the profit to keep doing programs and keep inspiring kids.
Have you observed at all that there are certain genres that are most resonating with the youth?
Oh yeah, for sure. So for younger kids, I'd say that picture books are basically what they read, but they also like reading books that are either, there's two sides of the spectrum. So there's complete fantasy, and then there's books that are totally relatable, and then there's also a middle ground. But I feel like kids gravitate towards each end of the spectrum. So they either go for books that are completely relatable to them and that they love, or they go for books that are out of this world and it's like kids in outer space, you know? And then for middle grade, I think that they definitely love relatable books. And for young adult, we all love fantasy a lot. I mean, I feel like it actually goes into that younger kid thing as well, because there's fantasy and then there's contemporary. So I know a lot of teenagers who love reading contemporary, and then a lot of teenagers who love reading fantasy. And I'm one of those people that will read pretty much any young adult book, but a lot of the kids around me are either side of the spectrum.
Okay. And do you prefer fiction or nonfiction? Does that matter?
I think that I definitely read a lot more fiction than nonfiction, but I read a lot of realistic fiction because that's definitely what's more popular with the publishers. So a lot of the books that I'm reading now are suggested by publishers if they want me to interview their authors. So that's more what I read, but I love dystopian books. That's my absolute favorite of all time.
And what do you love about it so much?
I love the concept of how things are now and how they can progress in the future, and how a different author's imagination means a different thing for their future. So, for example, when I read Hunger Games, I was like, wow, this is kind of what could possibly be if the United States didn't win the Revolutionary War. Or there's so many other conspiracy theories. That's also what I love. I know it's kind of weird, but I love conspiracy theories that have to do with books. So there are so many of those for a lot of dystopian books or post-apocalyptic books, and that's what I really love about it.
Can you share one that comes to mind? A
My favorite.
conspiracy theory? Yeah.
Oh, conspiracy theory? Yeah, Hunger Games, that one. I think that the author wrote that based off of the United States losing the Revolutionary War, because in the have you read the book? Wait, I don't want to.
The Hunger Games? I've
Yes.
read some of it. It's not really for me. It's not like my preference, but it's an amazing franchise. I recognize that.
Yeah, so basically there are 12 districts, and then there's a place called the capital. So I think that the capital is based on, the British settlements coming to America, and then that's how it was when, they stayed here instead of going back to England. And
Mhm.
then the rest of the districts are the original states, so the East Coast of America. And then that's how, the Hunger Games was formed, and that's why 75 years later, that's where we are.
I love your podcast so much because you do have, these conversations about literature. You're talking to your friends, you're talking to authors, as we've said. I really like that you even quizzed Nick Stone that time, like on her book. And yeah, so what was the foundation for coming up with the Book Junkie podcast and what you base it around?
So it all started during COVID, actually, because most of our income is from our pop-up bookstores, which we can't do if there are no events to go to that people are not producing, because we can't have large gatherings. So I was sitting at home and I said, what can I do to get people inspired even though they're still in their houses? And what's something that unifies so many people across America and around the world? It's technology. So I said, hey, maybe we can bring books and technology together. And I thought a great way to do that was the Book Junkie podcast, because number one, I thought I should take advantage of this time, because authors, specifically popular authors, are not as busy as they would be because they go on book tours and they do so many different events that they don't have now. So I should take advantage of this and reach out to them and see if they would be willing to talk to me. So that's how I got authors like Nick Stone, who I was so excited to talk to, because she was excited about Brown Kids Read as an initiative and what our mission is. So another reason why I started the Book Junkie podcast was because I realized that a whole bunch of our efforts and a lot of our work were going towards younger kids. And although Brown Kids Read is geared towards babies to old teenagers, a lot of our work was going towards younger ones. So I wanted something specifically for teenagers to get excited about reading.
And what has been the response so far to Brown Kids Read, as well as everything that you're doing?
Adults love it. I can definitely say that all of the parents that I've spoken to that have been touched by Brown Kids Read, they really love the initiative and they love what I'm trying to do because it impacts their children directly. Also, the children themselves are so excited because I handpick all of the books on our bookshelf. So especially at pop-up bookstores, if kids come to me and they're like, "Hey, I'm 9 years old and I love fantasy books and I love, this specific thing," I know exactly which book that we should get for them, and they feel special because I know which book we should get for them. So they buy it and they go home and they read it and they think about Brown Kids Read and they want to come back to events and they want to keep doing the contests that we offer and things like that.
What would you say are some of the most pivotal lessons that you've learned in the journey of Brown Kids Read so far? And it's still
Well,
early.
yeah, the first thing I would say is what my mother says all the time. And she says the worst thing somebody can say is no. So whenever I want to ask people to help support Brown Kids Read, or I want to ask people to get people involved in this contest or do something, I always think that it's best to ask and not be afraid to put yourself out there. So that's one important lesson I learned from doing Brown Kids Read. Also, I learned that time management is very important because in the beginning, I was very frazzled. I was a little bit disorganized because I was new to the whole nonprofit thing. But once I got things together, I've been running a lot more smoothly. So, I just schedule everything. So, scheduling is very important.
And you are a fan of authors who you feel are making an impact in children's literature. So who are the authors, in addition to Nick Stone, that you feel that you've been very moved by and you think that they're really changing the industry for the better?
I definitely say that another one I love so much is Tiffany D. Jackson. I just got to read her one of her unreleased books called Grown, and she commented on, child predators and how a lot of the time Black girls specifically are not taken seriously when it comes to things like that. I think another influential author is Brittany Morris,
Mhm.
and I think that she's also important because her book Slay came out, and she really made sure that the importance of Black girls being able to do anything was highlighted. So the main character in that book is a video game developer, but I noticed that in the beginning, everybody assumed that she was a he because she was anonymous. So that's something I really loved as well.
Would you write a book of your own, Ssanyu?
I am, actually. I'm writing a children's book, and it's probably going to come out sometime next year. But I've always wanted to write a book. I was that kid in school who, instead of playing with cars or, making little purses with my friend, I would sit there and write a story. So that's definitely something that I love to do and that I'm doing.
That is very exciting. I have a feeling that that book is just going to be wonderful. Can you tell anything about it, or
Yeah,
should we wait?
so I can say a few things. The main character is actually based on my little brother. So I'm really excited for that. I'd love the whole concept is based on something that I want to do for Brown Kids Read, which would really spread it across the country, but I can't really say what that is right now. So I'm just going to say that it's going to be big. The concept of the book is one of the next steps for Brown Kids Read.
What is the feeling that you want people to get when they read a book by Ssanyu Lukoma?
I want them to feel inclusion. So my biggest thing with Brown Kids Read is diversity and inclusion. And I feel like everybody deserves to have a voice. So in the future, I also want to write a lot of young adult books, and that's something I think it's something that needs to be prominent, that everybody is included, everybody is accepted, and everything is diverse because everybody deserves to have a voice.
Wow. And I want to know some questions. I want to ask you some questions about some of your reading preferences and your reading style. I know you mentioned that you're a fast reader. What does that look like? How
Oh,
fast are you?
well, I'll just give you an example. The night before last, I was on my Kindle and I finished a book, and it was 12 o'clock at night. And I looked in my list to see what other books there are, and I was like, oh, Grown. I want to read that tonight. Maybe I'll just read the first, 20 pages or get through the first few chapters. I finished the book. It's like 380 pages, and I finished it at 3 o'clock in the morning. So I can read a whole book in one sitting. If I'm really, really engaged, I can read it that fast. If it's something that I don't want to read, or like example, in school I have to read classics which are not really that interesting to me, so I will read that book, but it might take me a tiny bit longer, maybe 2 days or 3, but I read pretty fast, so
You
that's.
sure do. You really do. That's awesome. Do you prefer to read digitally or hard copy, or do you like audiobooks?
I love hard copy, but I recognize that a lot of the time it's gonna be way more expensive to get hard copy. So a lot of the books that I read are on Kindle, but also because publishers send me books through NetGalley, so that's how I get their books. So a lot of the books I read on Kindle, but I really love hard copy. And I don't really listen to audiobooks because when I read, in order to go faster, I need to see the words. So I'll like scan the page and then I'll look for the keywords and then I'll pick up the concepts and I'll move on. So that's how I comprehend the book. But audiobooks, I feel like I would also get distracted doing other things.
And why do you think reading in general is so important, and what benefits have you seen them provide for you?
Oh, definitely. So when I first started researching reading, children reading, and why it was so important, one of the first things I saw is that it helps you to learn and it broadens your perspective. So when you read a book about somebody else's experience that you've never encountered them before, you've never heard of where they're from before, and you read that book, you've just gotten a different perspective into life. So it also brings in more ideas like tolerance. So once you understand somebody, it's easier to respect them. It brings in education. So once you read a book, you're able to learn more things. You learn more words, you learn more concepts, and you learn more things in general. But you also have something that you can bond with someone over. Because if you read a book and somebody else reads a book, that's something that you have in common. Even if you're from two completely different places, have two completely different experiences, you can read the same book. And from there, you can have a conversation, you can have a debate, you can have, so many things that come from books. And I feel like they just unify us as a whole.
That is well said, if I must say so myself. Yeah.
Thank
So
you.
what, no problem, Sanyu. And what are some other conversations that you are looking forward to having with other people in your age group on the Book Junkie podcast?
Oh, so one of the things that I'm really excited to do, I'm actually planning to do an episode on this, is about voting. So I have an author that is one of our featured authors, and she just wrote a book called The Voting Booth. And I'm gonna base an episode around that. I want to do a panel discussion because this is a voting year and there's a lot of different things that go into the importance of voting and the importance of minorities voting so that they have a voice, which is also goes into Brown Kids Read because I want everybody to have a voice.
Ssanyu Lukoma, everyone. Ssanyu, you are awesome. Thank you so much for doing the interview today. I appreciate it, and I think it's just outstanding everything that you're doing, and looking forward to that book and everything that you have going on. Are there any other upcoming projects, events, contests, interviews that we should be out on the lookout for?
Yes, so we just launched our Book Junkie Insiders Book Club. So what we created was a book club, but not just a regular book club. It's actually action oriented. So we have 3 different books that teenagers specifically, can get involved in. The first one is Parable of the Brown Girl. The second one is Just Mercy. And the third one is March. So we have different mentors for each of those books. And people can sign up to be in it. And it only spans for the month of August. And they're in that book club and they actually get to either meet the author or somebody influential in that area of expertise. And I'm just so excited for it because I've always wanted to start a book club for Brown Kids Read, but this is also based on the Book Junkie podcast because it's inspiring conversation based around a book. So I'm excited about that. And we're also doing a writing contest with Tiffany McDuffie and Amanda Miller Littlejohn based around their book, based around Miss Amanda's book, Write Your Story. So kids will have the opportunity to learn how to write their own book over the month of August. And what's even better is that the winners get to have their book published. So the top prize winner will
Wow.
get their book published.
Okay, that is very exciting. And how can people keep up with you and Brown Kids Read and all of that? Stay updated and stay connected.
Yes, so our website is brownkidsread.org. Our Instagram is brownkidsread. Our Facebook is brownkidsreadnj, and our Twitter is at brownkidsread. So all of our social media platforms are pretty easy to find. Oh, also our LinkedIn is at brownkidsread. And you can also reach out to us by email. So my Brown Kids Read email is sanyu@brownkidsread.org. So if you have a personal request or if you have anything that you want to ask me. But if you have just a general question about Brown Kids Read as well, then you can email info@brownkidsread.
Make sure you guys do that, you know. And yeah, I would love to talk with you again in the future, Ssanyu.
Me too. This was a great conversation.
Thank you. Likewise, I really enjoyed it. And I'm a big fan of the Book Junkie podcast. You guys need
Thank
to check that
you.
out. No problem. And thank you so much to all the listeners. Until next time, so booking cool.